So you got this extreme extraction, and so you got that facet of addiction, and then you have haters. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I'm not a fan of the fossil fuel era. I'm like just the rest of you. I was born in this era. It's the era that I've lived my whole life in, fossil fuel era. I've had a pretty good time, I haven't, driven around as many motorcycles as a couple of you have, but, usually stick to my horse, but, I had a party. I enjoyed it. Did y'all like the fossil fuel era? Come on, admit it. It's okay. It's fun. It was fun, huh? It's like a lot of fun, right? And what I want is an elegant transition out of it. I want an elegant transition. I don't want to like crash and burn my way out with everything dead by the time I'm done combusting myself to oblivion. And that's what we deserve, because the system is like that. But in the interim, what I know is one thing is that the largest oil reserves in the world are where? In Venezuela. In Venezuela, largest oil reserves in the world. Hugo Chavez, vilified by the Bush administration. He was a smart guy, Bush, huh? Vilified by the Bush administration, and this country set upon the destruction of Venezuela's economy. That's what they did. Crushing it. That's what they're doing now, the final crushing of that economy. By, all of the oil in this country, we used to be big importers from there. And in that process of importing, all of the infrastructure of this country, a lot of it was set up on the Gulf Coast, right? It was set up on the Gulf Coast. And so that's where the oil came into this country, was from the Gulf Coast. But when you hate on a country like Venezuela, and you want to create some energy independence, which is basically how the Koch brothers make more money, and how these corporations make more money, because it really has nothing to do with energy independence. It has to do with extracting things that should not be extracted, taking more than you need, destroying things to make some corporate profits. You got to replumb the infrastructure in North America. That's what they're doing. That's what those pipelines are about. It's a whole bunch of replumbing that makes no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense for a lot of reasons. One of them is that you already got aging pipelines here. We all got the same ones, 50-year-old pipelines. Let me know how those are before the Clean Water Act was passed and when those pipelines were put in, right? Before the environmental laws. So you know that they're just perfect. Perfect. Plus their structural anomalies and all their little problems, right? Plus that tar sands, which is like all, corrosive stuff, right? And then the other thing is that, you got aging infrastructure, you got infrastructure which is like, crumbling, bridges that crumble. I'm actually not opposed to pipelines. I'd like to see, I like water and sewer. Right now I have 300 miles of pipeline sitting in northern Minnesota, and I wish I could just send it to Flint, Michigan. It's not the right size, but basically I want pipelines to go for people who need them. I don't actually need a pipeline. Only reason I got pipeline going my way is, their proposals for Enbridge. So I'm saying we could do things differently. But they are bound and determined on this process, and no one has checked them. No one has asked the economic questions of what's your plan? State of Wisconsin, what's your plan? Minnesota, what's your plan? So these guys have continued ahead. So that is how part of this happened. In North Dakota. But it also happened, and it happened because we pushed them out of Minnesota. But it happened also because of the racism which exists in this country. And I think, we can all be in denial about it, but the fact is like the social movement, any progressive social movement in this country has totally ignored North Dakota for 50 years. And what do I mean about that? I mean the Poppers. You guys remember Frank and Deborah Popper? They were these demographers from Rutgers University. They did this report called, this great book called The Buffalo Commons. And they talked about the idea that North Dakota had depopulated for the past 50 years. And people left and they moved to, San Francisco. I think everybody moved to San Francisco or someplace, from North Dakota. They moved out of North Dakota, right? They moved out of North Dakota because it wasn't cool to live in North Dakota anymore or whatever, And so then, they kept moving out. And then in the meantime, the people who would live there forever, that being the indigenous people, are hanging in there. And it gets more and more aggressive towards them. I mean, not that the assassination of Sitting Bull wasn't a good start, but that's an indicator of North Dakota's Indian policy. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, they just arrested the tribal chairman of Standing Rock about a month ago. So he started arresting heads of state. And oh, that's right, that Amy Goodman incident, y'all see that? Arrested Amy Goodman. I was reading the Bismarck Tribune a couple days ago, the Bismarck paper is trying to determine if she's actually a journalist. I was like, you guys are in such a vacuum in North Dakota. Apparently no one has watched Democracy Now! In the state legislature. I was like, Morton County, you are behind things, But, they kept doing that. And so North Dakota has like some of the worst statistics for Indian country ever. There's no infrastructure on a lot of those reservations. That's a fact. Standing Rock, has this road that kills people every year because it doesn't have a damn shoulder on it. Basics. 40% of the people live in overcrowded housing. Their water systems are like crushing. Their IHS facility, Indian Health Service facility, was built in like the 50s, right? They have every statistic you don't want to have. Indian arrest rates 11 times that of non-Indians. Incarceration rates like twice as long, right? It's like bad stuff. Bad stuff. A couple years ago, this woman named Debbie Dogskin froze to death on the Standing Rock Reservation because she could not pay her heating bill. And she was less than 100 miles from the Bakken where they blow off all that methane. They blow off all that gas and flare it, right? And nobody cared. I've been looking at North Dakota like nobody cared. And you know what? I just have to call us all out on this, because you know what? The Sierra Club has one person in North Dakota. The American Civil Liberties Union has one person that covers both North and South Dakota. Civil society ignored North Dakota. We just flew over it. Said, oh, there's North Dakota. Hope things work out for them. Flew over it and said, oh, Fargo, that was that funny city they had in the movie. I'm telling you that the choices made by politically astute people in this country have been choices of convenience. Well, we'd really rather live in Madison, how many, or Minneapolis, I battle these guys in Minneapolis. I'm just like, you guys show up up north sometime. Oh, that's right, we're busy. How many, major social justice or environmental organizations do you need in these urban areas, and you leave these other places out there? And then things go awry and you end up with a rogue state. And so North Dakota is essentially, to the best of my ability, it's like the Mississippi of the North. That's how we view it. And then you wonder how it all comes down. So you have this intersection of entrenched intergenerational racism, public policies which buttress racism, and oil oligarchy that runs the damn state, right? And writes all its legislation. Last year I ended up at this hearing, I stumbled into this damn hearing on T norms, technically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive materials. Y'all get that? Technically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive materials. That's like frack wastewater. Technically enhanced, I didn't really know that's what you would call that, right? And what they want to do is that, and they have these like wastes and frack socks. And what they did in North Dakota is that they decided to allow the dumping of that in municipal landfills. So like at what point do the recommended daily allowances for radiation increase? Did I miss? And they're doing it all over the country now. They're saying, well, we're just going to use background levels now. Although they've escalated background levels and augmented them, and you've got a slippage, and it's so fabulous that now, I just learned this last week, or about a week and a half ago, that they're now using fracking wastewater to water agricultural crops in the Central Valley in California. Yeah, and why is that? Because they have a drought. And they're running it through some walnuts and stuff. Like, I'm feeling super confident about that California produce now. Particularly pomegranates and grapes. I heard that's like it. I was like, that is just great. Somebody filed a lawsuit and I was like, wow. That's like, like Mari was talking about, the environmental laws are really no help on this. Because it's called regulatory capture. When corporations write your laws. And so that's what happened. And what happened specifically, in North Dakota, on this DAPL pipeline, there's a few things that we need to watch out for. So this week, on the 10th, Honor the Earth with the Sierra Club and the Indigenous Environmental Network sent a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers asking for a full EIS, full environmental impact statement on the DAPL line. They didn't do a full EIS. Why didn't they do a full EIS? Because what they did is they did this thing where they didn't use the requirements that the Army Corps has, which is to issue a 404 permit. It gets kind of technical, but let's just say that there's this other thing called the nationwide permit, which is intended for use in small pipelines, like maybe the one from your school to the housing project, that only affect a half an acre of wetland. And so what they did is they took a pipeline that ends up being 1,149 miles long or something like that, and truncated it into a set of small pipelines. And in that process of using this nationwide permit thing, they were not required to have transparency or hearings. So that's the hijacking of the regulatory system, right? Clever on them, right? Clever on them. So that's how they got all those permits, because I was like, how did they get all those permits? They got all those permits because they hijacked the system. And the Army Corps let them do it. The Army Corps let them do it. And so we're challenging that. But you cannot, you should not be able to approve a 1,168 mile crude oil pipeline under the nationwide permit regulations, right? That's the first thing they did. The second thing they did is that they violated, of course, the National Historic Preservation Act. And I think y'all, I don't know if y'all were watching that, but I don't know if you saw the day the dogs came out. How many of you saw the day that the dogs came out? So for those of you who were out there, what happened is that on Friday, September 2nd, the Standing Rock Tribe released to the court a list of absolute, sacred sites right in the pipeline corridor, including 27 graves and a number of stone cairns and sacred sites that were right on the pipeline route. This is on a Friday, September 2nd. On September 3rd, which would be a Saturday on Labor Day weekend, DAPL, Dakota Access Pipeline Company, dispatched a crew and bulldozed those sites specifically. They bulldozed those graves and they bulldozed those sacred sites. And as they were bulldozing, I was in camp that day and people went running up there. And stood there. And that's when DAPL released the dogs. This is one of those other anomalies which you better watch out for in Wisconsin. This is like, what governs private security firms? What can they do? You can put dogs on people apparently in North Dakota. I'm not sure. Can you waterboard people? Questions that we should like to know the answer for in civil society. This is when you have a civil society crisis. When, on behalf of this corporation, you can do that. So, violation of that. The third is this EJ question, environmental justice question. And the environmental justice question is something like this. On August 18th, Bismarck Tribune reveals that, looking at DAPL's papers, Dakota Access papers, that DAPL had decided specifically to, reveals that DAPL had routed the pipeline through Standing Rock's ancestral lands and under its drinking water supply to avoid jeopardizing the drinking water supply of Bismarck. The paper reported early in the planning process, Dakota Access considered crossing this area about 10 miles north of Bismarck, but rejected that option due to the costs associated with the proximity to wellhead source water protection areas of municipal waterways. So instead, what they do is instead of putting at risk the capital of North Dakota with all those enlightened politicians in it, they run that pipeline right north of Standing Rock, which is the water supply not only for Standing Rock, but for every other reservation that's down there. That's what racism looks like. That's what environmental justice looks like. And that's what these companies and these states continue to do to us. That's what we're looking at the pipeline in northern Minnesota. I was like, why we got pipeline up here proposal? Why don't you run it down by your city? Why don't you run it down the state interstate if you need it so bad? You know what you're doing. You know why we need it. They're like, it's a lower population zone. And then finally, the issue, the lack of a cumulative EIS. So to me, which we all know would involve things like well-to-wheels accounting. 250,000 metric tons of CO2 a day is probably not something you want to add to the environment. That's what we're talking about. How much CO2 is in these pipelines. So I'm an economist, I told you. That's called full-scale accounting. You actually got to figure out what the cost is before you try to pretend that, we all get to bear these invisible costs, the invisible hand of Adam Smith or whatever that was. It's like you don't get to do that to us. So that is what's going on out there. Is they ram that through, then the confluence between that and the racism that North Dakota has operated under in this vacuum of scrutiny, where they feel as if they are able to do whatever they want to, is why there's 130 people arrested right now. And some of those people are from Wisconsin. There's Iraq War veterans that got arrested. There's a lot of Native people that got arrested. There's a lot of church people that got arrested. There's a lot of people that got scooped up that didn't mean to get arrested. They were praying out there, and they got charged with rioting while praying. It's preposterous. But that's what happens when you let something go and no one pays attention. And that's the deep north. That's what it is. And so I'm saying this is part of what we all have to do in the paradigm shift. is that we have to address the structural racism and understand the intersection between, how that happens. And we gotta challenge it. Because my open challenge to the governor of North Dakota is what you can do. How far are you gonna go? You can start shooting people for that line. You're gonna shoot people for that line. And that state needs to be called out as a pariah. And in the trials that are gonna ensue in December and January, 2 favorite months for most people to visit North Dakota, people should come. People should come and bear witness. People should come and bear witness to North Dakota, because this is a time to put North Dakota on trial. You cannot charge that many people. And I don't know the full scale of our questions, but I'm saying, look, that's what is going on. So that is a crisis of civil society, and North Dakota is kind of like the test case, and Wisconsin is looking at North Dakota because they want to do that line here. And that's probably why your governor sent all those troops, because they're like, hey, he's going to do that here. So my last round with Enbridge, I'm doing this. Any of you see that movie Roger and Me? Was Michael Moore going after Roger? Was it at Ford? Was it after Ford? Jim, thank you. I have this thing with the president of Enbridge. His name's Al. I write him letters and stuff. You don't respond. It's such poor behavior there. So I wrote him letters. A couple days ago, I did a little video for him, because I suck and you just respond with video. So I was like, hey, it's Winona here. Hey, how are you doing? So I'm sitting out there, and we on the 10th. Same day as we file that letter to the Army Corps, we rode our horses on that proposed Apple pipeline route with those Lakotas. I was on the slow and elegant team, that's what I refer to it as, which is the women who were trotting and loping as opposed to the men that were on the full-on gallop. Although there's some Lakota and Dakota girls that were rocking it. I was like, I wish I could be you, but I'm not. It was cool to see, man. So we rode the whole route, 250 miles, up to Tioga, which is the source of my consternation, and probably, as some people say, the check station for when they instead put tar sands oil in it. And we rode our horses up there. We got there, and we ride through there. We rode through the facility, or around the facility a few times, and it was super funny because I was expecting the MRAP. We already discussed that thing, right? Department of Justice helped me get a route so that I wasn't endangering myself, but I was expecting a full-on riot police when I got there, but you know what, it's so funny. It was Columbus Day and they were all off. It's so funny. You could see those guys and they weren't even home. I was like, hey, Al, you guys wasn't home, I came to see you. Brought my horse, brought my dog, brought my granddaughter, you're not home, man. So I'm working on my video for Al, which is I say, Al, man, Al, I came to see you, you didn't come. And so, if you decide to do line 3, which is what we're fighting now, I said I'm moving home to fight line 3 because that's a bad idea. That's a tar sands pipeline, 760,000 barrels per day, of course, headed towards you. So you better hope we do pretty good in our battle. If you want to keep on that pipeline, I'm bringing all my homies from North Dakota over to see you. We know how to camp. We know how to camp in Minnesota. We're good. We can ride horse, so, I'll see you there, Al, but you don't want to do it. Just back down now. That's what I told him, back down now. So we'll see how that goes, if he gets gets the memo, bad plan. But to me it's it's a systemic issue, and I'm looking at the governor of North Dakota spent $7.8 million militarizing the state. That's what he did, that's a lot of money. I was like, how many solar panels could that have bought us? You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of question I would ask. How much infrastructure could that have bought us? 7.8 million, it seems like you could have bought a few things for that, instead of exasperating the situation, making it worse. That's ridiculous. Why don't you just do the right thing, Or else the other question is what would 3.9 billion buy? They're calling it energy independence, but this is where, the baffling thing to me. Today I'm reading that Bismarck Tribune, that tribute to American journalism, or whatever you call that thing. And the top story is oil is bottoming out at 900,000 barrels right now that North Dakota is producing, and they're shipping it out now. So just do a little math with me. They have 900,000 barrels a day of North Dakota fracked oil going out, right? Okay. They are projecting that to 2019, right? But they have a 570,000 barrel per day pipeline they're trying to put in, right? Where's that oil? Where's that oil? In what fantasy is that you are going to get that? Maybe you're just trying to get some tar sands oil down there, but that stuff's not even really going. I don't really know what that whole plan is, but I'm like, just do a little math. I'm like, this is the Dakota Excess Pipeline. It's not the Dakota Access Pipeline, it's the Dakota Excess Pipeline. It has nothing to do with the math or the reality. You know? In my position, you know, our position as Honor the Earth is that, you know, not only does Standing Rock deserve to not have a pipeline shut down its throat, but they actually deserve solar and wind. That's what they deserve. You know, because they're calling it energy independence. 85% drop in drilling rigs in the Bakken, they're calling it energy independence. And I'm like, no, energy independence is when you actually have solar thermal and you don't freeze to death in your house. You know, and that's, you know, everywhere. That's what it is. It's everywhere. So, you know, that's what I'm, you know, that's what I'm looking at. It's like, this is this opportunity. You need infrastructure for people, not for oil companies.